Hi there, folks. So let's make a Manhattan. So what's cool about Manhattans is that they're a whiskey cocktail that basically supplanted the old fashioned. Last time we were together, I realized that I said I was going to tell you why it was called an old fashioned, and then I just talked about what a cocktail is. So the reason an old fashioned is called an old fashioned is actually because the Manhattan, around the 1870s, it's hard to pick out exactly when, supplanted the whiskey cocktail. It used to be that you wouldn't order a whiskey old fashioned, you would just order a whiskey cocktail when you were at a bar in the 1800s. And because all cocktails were whiskey cocktails, they started to become called old fashions because the Manhattan was the new whiskey cocktail that was really, really good. So Manhattans were so hot on the scene that if you were still drinking a regular whiskey cocktail, you, sir, were old fashioned. So here's how we make an International Bartender Association standard issue Manhattan. This is how they should make it pretty much anywhere in the world if they're a trained bartender. So they're going to take 2 ounces of whiskey, either rye or bourbon. In this case, we're using some delicious, affordable Old Crow. So you're going to throw 2 ounces up in your stirring glass. Today we're using the bottom of my French WMF shaker. It kind of really doesn't matter what you stir these in. You can stir it in the fancy glass ones if you like it. It's not really going to affect it. We got 2 ounces of our whiskey, and then we want to add 1 ounce of vermouth, sweet vermouth in particular. The sweet vermouth that I'm adding is going to be this Carpano Antica formula, which bears the date 1786. That's when this was first invented, and invented the style of vermouth. So that's what's super cool about this cocktail is instead of being sugar as the sweetener, you got sweet vermouth as the sweetener, which is a great thing because it's even boozier. Now the IBA recipe is 2 ounces of whiskey, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and then 2 dashes of bitters. Bada bing, bada boom. You're going to stir this up because you want the cocktail to have a velvety texture and be kind of silken. So the reason that you stir a cocktail versus shaking it isn't to get it colder faster. It's rather to just change the texture. When you shake a drink, you aerate it and add a bunch of oxygen, and it becomes a little bit effervescent. When you stir a drink, you're not adding any air while you dilute it and chill it. So it should end up being very, very silky on the palate. Now, a lot of times people ask me, how long do you stir a drink for? Some bartenders and some bartender schools will say 15 stirs one way and then 15 stirs the other. For me, in my experience, it depends very much on the type of ice you're using. If you got big ice, it's going to take you a little bit longer or more aggressive stirring. If you got smaller ice, it's going to take a little bit shorter. There's no hard and fast rule or right or wrong way to do it. I would try not to stir it too long. With experience, you'll be able to tell the way the ice sits and the way the spoon moves through the glass. Or the stir cup, rather. So here we go. We got this guy stirred up. That's looking mighty fine. One way to tell if you stirred it the right way, if you stirred it enough, is when you pour it out. If any bubbles form on the surface, they'll remain for a while because you've increased the viscosity of the cocktail by stirring it. So there we go. As I stir it, you can see it's a much thicker liquid. It's much more viscous, more like pancake syrup, than it once was, than the initial whiskey that we used. That's what we're looking for in the texture. And just like I said, you can see the bubbles on there. Well, maybe if I can aim it right. But I don't know if I can show that. But hey, there's bubbles from me pouring it in the glass, and they'll stay there. And you'll see that when you make it at home, trust me. So there we go. You're going to garnish this guy with a cocktail cherry. Kerplunk. And you can also garnish it with orange zest. Very often I like to flame an orange peel over it, but I'm going to show you how to do that when I discuss a variant recipe that Jerry Thomas published in 1887. So Jerry Thomas is notable. He was the first guy to publish a cocktail recipe book back in 1865. He published a couple cocktail books throughout his lifetime and career, and the Manhattan was a recipe that he was, quite familiar with. And he has a recipe from 1884 and one from 1887. And it's a little bit different, but I'll show you that another time. Really delicious drink. We're going to see what Sherry thinks, though. I'm not even going to sip this. I'm going to let her.
Wow. That is a good Manhattan.
Pretty good. So, myself, I prefer a rye Manhattan, and I prefer it with the recipe that I'm going to show you guys next time. And I'll show you how to flame an orange peel on that one. And hopefully I'll have my better channel knife so I can zest the orange a little bit better too.